We have privately held BP Polymers. Headquartered in Irvine, California, BP Polymers is the sole North American manufacturer of Coral barrier resins and Cortrax. Cortrax is a nylon-based PFAS alternative used in the manufacturing of its sister company's Barretainers, with the sister company Barrier Plastics, and other applications. Due to its protective barrier characteristics containing fluids and liquid chemicals, there is no need for fluorination additives post-manufacturing treatment. Today we have the pleasure of hosting COO Kevin Callahan, one of the founders of both BP Polymers and Barrier Plastics in 2008. And his role as COO created the Barretainer and developed Coral and Cortrax. Prior to founding both companies, he was a senior executive at Sears Home Services. And now I'll turn it over to Kevin to learn more about BP Polymers. Thanks, Kevin.
A little tongue twister there, huh?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Rosemary, and the team at Gabelli for inviting me this morning to speak with you with regards to my company, BP Polymers, and Barrier Plastics, our sister company. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about packaging with regards to PFAS. So this is something that's going to be a little bit more prosaic, but it's very ubiquitous. Packaging is everywhere, and we take it for granted because it is so successful. Now, you've heard about food packaging. Rosemary brought that up earlier with regards to PFAS and found in food packaging and how everybody was sensitive to that, and that's pretty much been addressed. But what we haven't heard about, what a lot of people do not know about, and that's what I'm going to educate with you this morning about, is PFAS in packaging and why that is the case. So for our agenda this morning, we're going to talk about the barrier packaging challenge, some of the technologies that are being currently used. We'll talk about the fluorination of polymer containers, i.e. plastic containers. And then we'll discuss Cortrax, the technology, the value proposition, some updates on regulatory, and then some Q&A with regards to what we're doing and where we are in terms of the growth curve. Before we get into the specifics of the different types of barrier packaging alternatives, I want to paint the picture for you. Many of the products that you take for granted every day are considered barrier-required products. In other words, you have to have a certain type of packaging in order for that product to be distributed, to be sold, to be used. So for example, products like automotive aftermarket products, octane boosters, for example, car wash products, cosmetics like mascara, certain shampoos which use citrus, these are all considered barrier-required products. And that's because the chemistry that's being packaged in these polymers, in these containers, will eat that packaging alive. So you have to put something in that package, you have to treat that package in order to prevent the package from disintegrating. And what the industry has come up with over the years are basically three types of packaging technologies. The first one is what we call a multi-layer package. You might have heard of that. Essentially what it is you're putting in, when you make the bottle, you have your plastic that makes the bottle, and you put in a layer, usually in the middle of the container, either made of nylon, which is the trade name, a polyamide is the chemical name, or EVOH. And it's that layer that protects the chemistry that's being put in the container from eating the plastic completely and spilling all over the place on the shelf, okay? There are issues with EVOH we'll get to, but specifically, it's not really a very good sustainable option because it's not really considered highly recyclable. You can recycle some of it, but it is still very problematic. And it's also expensive, both from a CapEx point of view, but also from a material cost. The other one that we're going to talk about, we're going to actually go into in depth, is fluorine treatment. And I guarantee you that you probably have not heard about fluorination of plastic containers. A lot of the containers, 200 million containers a year to be exact, approximately 150 to 200 million containers, are fluorinated or treated every year. And they go into the waste stream. These containers, again, are everything from a shampoo bottle to automotive, to flavors, the flavors that you find in Coca-Cola or beer. Those containers that are used are treated with fluorine. When you treat a container with fluorine, certain things happen, and we'll talk about that. And then the last alternative for barrier packaging options is monolayer, what we call monolayer barrier additives. In other words, products such as ours, which are incorporated into the container during the manufacturing process. So even though this might not be such a sexy business, it is a very good business, okay? It's very good. This slide I want to put here to give you a historical context for this whole debate about fluorinated containers. Now, we don't have time to show this video. This is a video that was done by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg short-form video documentary. It's called The Forever Threat. And what the video highlights, about 16-minute video, you can get on YouTube if you want to take a look at it. And yours truly is in the video itself. Do you ever see yourself in a video and you watch yourself in a video? Oh my gosh, you're like, oh, is that me? You know, you get this cognitive dissonance when you see that. But anyway, so the video goes into detail about how this issue with regards to fluorinated, the common term is also treated containers became such a big hot button issue. And we got involved, BP Polymers and Barrier Plastics got involved in the very beginning with regards to this issue in order to help one company, Clark Mosquito, transition from a fluorinated container, which they got in trouble with the EPA, to using our containers in order to package their, not their herbicides, their larvicides, okay, their mosquito products. So if you get a chance, I know we all have busy lives, you might want to check it out. All right, so we mentioned the fluorination process. I'm going to go into a little bit of a deeper dive on this. In short, you take an already molded bottle, a bottle that's made what we call converters. The people who make the bottles, they buy the HDPE resin and they make a bottle. They take those bottles and they ship it to a company named Enhance. You might have heard of them, maybe, maybe not. They're located in Houston, Texas, and they have approximately 8 different facilities throughout the United States. Again, the video will lay that out. But what they do is they take that bottle and they put it in an environmental chamber, draw down a vacuum, and under heat and pressure, expose it to fluorine gas and other inert gases. So that bottle gets exposed to fluorine for a period of time so that the fluorine bonds with the carbon chains inside, well, the carbon chains that make up the bottle. Okay? And what happens is the fluorine layers onto the inner and exterior surface of the bottles and act as a barrier to prevent the chemistry that you're packaging from migrating through the bottle. So you're exposed to PFAS every day, multiple times a day. This is done, as I mentioned earlier, approximately 150 to 200 million bottles a year. And those bottles go right back into the recycle stream. And then that plastic, which is contaminated, and I've got all the data to prove it, then gets recycled into more bottles over and over again. A visual representation of exactly what happens when you fluorinate. As you can see, the surface of the bottle gets, the fluorine bonds with the carbon inside the carbon chain inside the HDPE bottle. So it's just a visual on that. These are some of the areas in which you will find these bottles. I mentioned them before. Household maintenance, for example, furniture cleaners, hardwood floor cleaners, anything with a citrus product. If you see, it's a natural cleaner. And if it's in a HDPE bottle, not a clear bottle, but like a white bottle maybe, okay, that probably has been treated because the citrus, like lemon or orange or lime or pine, will eat right through that bottle. So your household chemicals, janitorial products, pesticides, big hot button. Most of your pesticides, well, a lot of your pesticides, I don't want to say most, a lot of your pesticides are treated with fluorine. So not only do you have the issue with the product itself, but the bottle that's used to contain the product is treated, and that gets contaminated with PFAS. And that's what happened in Massachusetts a few years ago when the EPA discovered that pesticide that was being put out by Clark Mosquito was actually contaminated with PFAS from the fluorination treatment. Your fuel tanks on your lawnmowers. If you have a lawnmower and you have a plastic fuel tank on there, it's treated. Flavors. We work with Firmenich, a big flavor company out of Orlando in Lakeland, Florida. All those containers were being treated. Some of the flavor companies are still doing that, but flavor companies are gradually moving away from using fluorinated containers to ship flavors to various food companies throughout the US and the world. Health and beauty aids. Again, mascara. We're working with Estee Lauder to get them out of fluorinated containers wherever they're putting any of their cosmetic products in there. And solvents, basic solvents, like xylene, for example, are all, if they're packaged in plastic, are using fluorinated containers. So back in March of 22, the EPA did a study, and they got themselves, they purchased on the market, a number of fluorinated containers. And these fluorinated containers, they wanted to see, the EPA that is, wanted to understand the nature or the extent of the issue with regards to PFAS contamination. And in this study in March, what they did is they filled these fluorinated containers, they don't tell you where they got them from, but they filled these fluorinated containers with water, and over time, they measured the level of PFAS contamination. This is just from water. Here, one of the takeaways you can see from this is the longer it sits, the more the PFAS migrates from the surface of the fluorinated container into water. And if you look at the pink one, the pink, I know you can't see it on the screen, but the pink one is PFOA. So even though there might not be any company in the United States currently manufacturing PFOA per se, fluorination is manufacturing PFOA every day, over and over. Now, they also took those bottles and they filled them up with methanol. And they wanted to see how bad does it get if you use a solvent like methanol and to determine the level of extractable PFAS from that. As you could see from this slide, it was pretty bad. So the longer you sit, and if you have an aggressive chemistry in there, that PFAS goes right into that chemistry that you have packaged, and it's contaminated. And we're talking way past 4 parts per trillion. We're talking at parts per billion level. So 1,000% more than what the MCL is for PFOA. All right, now that I totally terrified you, this is what we do. We're based in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we have a facility we work with a facility in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we produce Cortrax, which is a monolayer nylon barrier additive that gets incorporated into the bottles during the manufacturing process. We've been in business since 2008, so about 15, 16 years. And this Cortrax barrier resin, which is a PA6 combined with a compatibilizer and an optical tracer, received its patent. In addition, we have other patents pending with USPTO for different versions of Cortrax for different applications. Versus fluorination, not only are we safer because there are no PFAS extractables from the polyamides that we use, but you also eliminate the extra handling and freight costs, going from the converter to the fluorination facility to the toll filler who puts the chemistry in the bottle, and then going to market. That whole process is eliminated. Why? Because when you make the bottle, you're adding the barrier, all right? In addition to that, Enhance, because of their market share position, they can command premium pricing. When you use Cortrax, it's literally pennies per bottle because of the amount of material that you're using is very small regarding with respect to the rest of the bottle. So it's a very, very economic, very competitive advantage versus a fluorination treatment. Now, we're going to take a minute or two just to discuss how it works. During the extrusion process, when you make a bottle, you put the high-density polyethylene, the plastic, into a hopper, and then it goes through a machine where it melts and gets put through a die head into a mold, and you make a bottle. Very basic, very simple, all right? In that hopper, there's different chambers, and in those different chambers, you add different things. Usually you add your color, for example. So if you want a white bottle, a red bottle, blue bottle, what have you, all right? Cortrax goes into that chamber, and I'll show you a blender in a minute. And then during the extrusion process, as this material goes through the barrel of the machine, the nylon melts and it bonds with the base resin, whether it's polypropylene or high density, and it creates these overlapping layers, as you can see in that picture. And it's these overlapping layers that act as a physical structure, a resistant structure to the chemistry, to the molecules that are going in the bottle. Here's another highlighted micrograph of what those layers look inside the bottle, all right? Did you ever think you'd be looking at bottle slides this early in the morning, right? Yeah, okay. So here's the slides of nylon, a slide of seeing the layers in the bottle. This is another example of it. This is stained with iodine. That's showing you the layering inside the bottle, all right? This slide shows you, this was a 20-liter container of tangerine oil. And you can see where this is the inside here, and as the tangerine oil was sitting inside the 20-liter container, it hits the Cortrax layer inside, because this container's got the way they make the containers with different layers of plastic. And it hits that layer that has the Cortrax in it, and it doesn't migrate to the outer surface. This container was manufactured by Mauser. Now, we call the containers, when they incorporate Cortrax, we call them baritainers. That's where the name comes from, because we wanted to have a distinguishable trade name for our product when it goes to market, all right? So that's where the name baritainer comes from. When we work with our customers, we insist that they put a name on the container if they're gonna put Cortrax in it, so the customers know that it's our product, that there is a barrier inside that container. Now, when you make the container, we talk about some of the manufacturing process here. It's really important that they have certain key changes to the manufacturing process in order to ensure success in blending the nylon. They have to have a blender, they have to make sure the temperatures work, blah, blah, blah. There's a couple different things they do. But they're relatively easy things that the machine operators do in order to process the material correctly. I'm not gonna go into all of that right now, but suffice it to say, the processing of Cortrax is almost as important as the material itself. And so consequently, in order to protect our IP, we have various agreements with different converters in the market, like confidentiality agreements and also manufacturing agreements, to ensure that the techniques they use to process the material, they don't use it for something else. This slide shows you an example of one of those blenders that we're talking with. The middle slide is our material, the Cortrax material, and the bottom slide shows you the blenders that the converter uses in order to add the material at usually a letdown ratio anywhere from 5 to 20%, all right? Now, during the manufacturing process, the bottle is made, and then it goes through a check. What we've done with Cortrax is we've added a UV colorant. So when you're showing a UV light onto the bottle, you'll know it's in there, so that you could be assured that the Cortrax is incorporated into the bottle, hence it glows blue. And sometimes I drive my wife crazy, because I'll go to Lowe's, and I'll take my little flashlight with me, and I'll go to the cleaning aisle, and I'll look. You guys know Zep? You ever heard of Zep? Okay, all right. If you go to Lowe's, I want you to all take a UV light, all right? And you go into the cleaning aisle, and you look for a Zep bottle, and it's a citrus cleaner. It's orange, and you shine a blue UV light on that, that's our bottle, all right? That's got the Cortrax in it. All right. From a regulatory perspective, we're really tight with the EPA. We have been tested by the EPA. There is a long-standing court issue going on right now in the DC Circuit Court with Enhance and with Peer with regards to getting the EPA off the dime here and really doing something about banning fluorinated containers. In the meantime, certain states have already taken the initiative. For example, Maine, Vermont, Illinois, Minnesota. So we're a small company, but I have to have a general counsel on hand because it's nuts when it comes to the legal stuff with this, all right? From a sustainability point of view, we are FDA, REACH, which is for the European Union, and USP compliant. USP is the United States Pharmacopoeia. So yes, we can be used in medical pharmaceutical products. We also have a recognition from the Association of Plastic Recyclers. Fluorinated containers are no longer considered acceptable for recyclability according to the APR. So we have a very big sustainable advantage. So yes, we can be put in the recycle stream. And finally, we have a couple of letters from the EPA. This is one of them. Yeah, can you read that? So yeah, there you go. Okay. Yeah, we have a letter from the EPA, 2 letters from two customers, Clark and Bayer, or Bayer as the Germans like to say, testifying that we're virtually PFAS free. All right. And this is the letter from the Association of Plastic Recyclers saying we're good to go. All right. All right, I'm going to move on, but the key takeaway here is, because I want to leave time for questions, I'm sure you're all fascinated with this subject. The key takeaways here is that it's a significant opportunity. Again, there's 150 to 200 million fluorinated containers. That doesn't include any other type of barrier opportunities. We are working in different grades also to provide oxygen and water vapor, and I didn't even want to get into that with you guys so that'll really bore you to tears, all right? We do have an economic advantage versus our competition. Yes, we are considered a first mover. We do have a huge advantage in the marketplace. We have patented IP protected technology, and we're fully recyclable into the stream, all right? So that's it. I know you're all anxious to ask me questions. Shoot.
Yeah, so with that, we'll open it up for questions. Got a few in the room to start.
Just a question on that cross-section.
Yes.
Tangerine oil, what was the oil? Okay.
Tangerine oil.
How are those 2 layers adhered, or how did those 2 layers come to be in one bottle?
And when they make that container, the inner layer is virgin material, 20%. That's where the Cortrax is. Then there's a middle layer of PCR, what they call PCR post-consumer resin, recycled, about 60%. And then there's another layer, another head, that's 20% virgin again. That's how they do it. And those all come together. There's no adhesive that's used because it's all HDPE.
Got it.
Okay.
Sorry, just a technical question.
No, no worries, no worries.
Come back there.
Could we have more examples of products that are currently in these bottles?
More examples? Oh, boy. Well, I talked about cosmetics, automotive. Oh, you know, we got a contract for lice shampoo. So if you go to Walgreens or you go to Walmart and you look, and God forbid, you know, your child goes to school and they come home with lice, you have to have a shampoo to kill the lice. I mean, I used to give shampoo out in the Coast Guard when I was a corpsman. And this lice shampoo is very aggressive and it eats the plastic. The bottles that were used to carry the lice shampoo were being fluorinated. Now they're using Cortrax, right? So there's one specific brand example, right? I can go on and on with different stuff.
If I could piggyback on that, which industries are you currently working with mostly, and how many pilots contracts do you have out currently?
Well, it's an interesting sales proposition. I drive my sales team crazy because you have to work with everybody in the chain. You have to work with the brand owner, you have to work with the converter, the people who make the bottle, and so you gotta get them to all come together. So in terms of the converters, we have over 18 different converters throughout the U.S. who are qualified to run Cortrax. I just don't sell the Cortrax into the market like, all right, here's a pound of Cortrax, give me $4.85. It doesn't work that way. We have to make sure that we qualify those converters so that they run the material properly and they don't screw it up, and then the brand name gets and the material gets a bad name. So we're very, very picky on how we do that. So that's why we have very tight converters that we work with. In addition, we work with different brands, different personal brands. I'll give you some examples. Firmenich, Givaudan in the flavor side, Mother's, Mother's car care products, McGuire's, 3M, Estee Lauder for their Los Lobos shampoo line. So the ladies in the room, if you're using that product line, that was being treated. It's now they're using Cortrax. In fact, I'm leaving here and I'm going to Estee out in Melville to do more trials for products, all right? So, and in the pesticide side, excuse me, I forgot, oh my gosh, pesticide. Okay, there's a bunch of customers that were working in the pesticide industry to get them away from fluorinated. So for example, we're working with Bayer, Corteva, and others.
Kevin, I heard you say this is a very good business. Can you dimensionalize the market opportunity?
No.
Maybe talk about the growth, profitability, and also whether you have plans to go public.
That's a great question. We're forecasting to do between 230 and 250,000 pounds of Cortrax this year. Our average margin's about 44.5%. We are very profitable. I think next year we're probably going to get close to 500,000 pounds of Cortrax. So do the math, all right? In terms of the market size, it is huge. I mean, if you just, like I said, if you look at fluorinated containers, that's 200 million containers a year just on that business. That doesn't include, by the way, doesn't include drums and totes, the big IBC things you see on the side of the road. It doesn't include those numbers either. And we're also working with certain companies who are getting at a metal. So for example, if you go to, again, Lowe's or Home Depot, and you look at those, in the paint aisle, you see the cans of acetone and xylene and toluene, okay. We're working with WM Bar for the clean strip line for the smaller containers, all right? And we also work with the pesticide companies. We have a contract with Scott's, for example, for their fire ant killer, which is 3 million bottles a year, all right? So it's big. That help? I haven't, you guys tell me. I mean, I'm open to the idea. We haven't done that yet, but we are looking to raise some capital because we need to expand.
Kevin, this is David Sands at the World Capital. As a follow-on from this question, you operate two companies. One is a supplier of materials, raw materials, and the other one is packaging. Can you provide some color? Obviously, you gave the 200 million pounds of Cortrax. I'd like to understand the difference between BP polymer and the barrier plastics.
Right, all right. Great question.
And what is the growth? I mean, how do you focus on these two organizations? Go ahead.
Barrier plastics is where we sell containers using the Cortrax product to specific customers like Firmenich and ADM, all right? Where we're actually using a converter, they're producing the container for us, and then we're selling it. This is one part of the business that we have a lot of room, well, we have a lot of room for both. But the container business is under barrier plastic and where the Barry Tainer name resides, all right? So we augment what our distributors are doing and what our converters are doing. Got it? All right. Then on the other side is BP Polymers, which is where the IP for Cortrax resides, all right? So Cortrax is sold by BP Polymers to a converter. I'll throw a name out, like Altium Packaging or CKS Packaging. Look them up, they're really big. And they, in turn, produce bottles. Those pictures are from CKS. And they produce the bottles, and it goes out to market, all right? That help? We're going to reorg a little bit, too, and we're going to tighten up that structure. But I wanted to keep them separate for a reason.
Time for one more quick one.
Thank
Running out
you.
of time.
Can you use the packaging process for food?
Yes, that's FDA compatible. And we're also going to be doing film trials with Dow in another month or so. All right, and we just got approval By the way, I forgot to tell you, for cold packs, you know, the medical packs for organ transport, they were being fluorinated. So think about that for a second. We're working with companies in Norway and Singapore and India for cold packs. We just got approval on it. So. No, they're all acceptable recyclability stream. That's what I was saying earlier about the Association of Plastic Recyclers. We have done a 2-year study with them to show the recyclability approval.
Okay, well, I had a bunch more questions, but unfortunately we're out of time.
I know I
was
talked too
that
much.
that was a great overview of the issues we're facing and of BP Polymers, and we look forward to following your progress. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Tony Bancroft and Timothy Winter, CFA, are portfolio managers. Wayne Pinsent, CFA, is Director of Research and Research Analyst, and Rosemary Morbelli, CFA, and Dr. Rebecca Stern, PhD, are Research Analysts at Gabelli Funds. The above webcast is a recording from the 3rd Annual PFAS Symposium, which occurred on September 17, 2025. GAMCO is providing these links as a matter of general information. We do not intend for these links to be a complete description of any security or company, nor is it a research report with respect to any of the companies mentioned herein. As of June 30, 2025, affiliates of GAMCO Investors Incorporated beneficially owned 1.1% of Minerals Technologies and less than 1% of all other companies mentioned. The analysts' views are subject to change at any time based on market and other conditions. The information in this posting represents the opinions of the analyst and is not intended to be a forecast of future events, a guarantee of future results, or investment advice. Views expressed are those of the analyst and may differ from those of other GAMCO officers, analysts, other employees, or of the firm as a whole. Because the investment personnel at GAMCO and our affiliates make individual investment decisions with respect to the client accounts that they manage, these accounts may have transactions inconsistent with the information contained in this posting. Certain GAMCO personnel may know the substance of the posting prior to its posting. This webcast is not an offer to sell any security, nor is it a solicitation of an offer to buy any security. Stocks are subject to market, economic and business risks that cause their prices to fluctuate. When you sell shares, they may be worth less than what you paid for them. For more information, a prospectus, or summary prospectus, visit our website at www.gabelli.com or call 800 Gabelli 800 422 3554914 921 5100 fax 914 921 5118 info@gabelli.com.